The views and opinions expressed in the following podcast do not necessarily reflect those of the producers, the affiliates, or digital platforms hosting this podcast. All content is for the purposes of education, conjecture, and at times entertainment. We promote inclusiveness and diversity. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to Into the Deep with Jay Costa.
Welcome to Into the Deep. I'm Jay Costa. I am delighted about today's guest. She's a singer-songwriter, yoga teacher, and has been a youth advocate for quite some time. Born and raised in the Kingdom of Hawaii, today's guest is Irie Love. Irie has been making music for over 20 years, spreading love and light through her lyrics and her energy. She's on a mission as an artist to empower, inspire, and entertain the world through her love of music. We talk about so much in this episode. We talk about our ancestors, spirituality, to empowering the youth and how they are the future, and we need to make an investment in them. So, join me as we seek light and journey into the deep with Irie Love. Enjoy. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. If you wouldn't mind sharing for those who are listening and, tuning in, maybe even watching, would you mind sharing who you are and what it is you do, my friend?
Yes, my name is Irie Love. I am originally born and raised in Hawaii, the Kingdom of Hawaii, and I am a singer, a yoga teacher. I've been a spin instructor and a personal trainer. I've worked with the youth for many, many years. That's kind of like my life's mission. And the background of everything that I do is to empower the youth. And I just want to really be a light for humanity through everything that I do.
I love that. Absolutely. It's evident in your lyrics, in your music, in just how you just live your life just with that. I love it. Your mission, I was so touched by it, to empower, inspire, and entertain the world through your love of music. I mean, yes. I can align with that in so many ways. Talk to me about your love of music.
Yeah. Music is, to me, the most powerful tool that we have to really cross over all the dividers or separation that we have between us as humans. And so I feel like being gifted with such a powerful tool is something that comes with a lot of responsibility. This is my take on it. Of course, everyone has their own perspective, but ultimately, I feel like music is a beautiful way to bring people together. And, even for myself, I can listen to a song in a different language that I don't speak, that I don't understand, and still be moved by it. And I think that in itself is so telling of how powerful music is.
I couldn't agree more. It really does just take down all those walls that like civilizations and humanity, social constructs that we just put up between one another. And it truly just feels like that universal language that like speaks to us on so many levels.
Yeah, for sure. Even in, if you look at wellness and the history of wellness, the most ancient form of medicine was sound frequency vibration. So, even taking it to that scale, scale pun intended.
Yes. Awesome.
Love when that happens naturally. It's a tool that was actually used to heal our bodies. It brings us back to homeostasis. It is a way to shift and manipulate the cells in our body and tell them what to do and where to go and how to be. And so I think that too is so powerful. I've actually started incorporating sound baths into my offerings. with crystal bowls. I'm still building my collection, but also just mainly utilizing my voice in a different way. And I just hosted the first one. The first one was with friends, and that was just beautiful. But the first one publicly was when I was just home in Hawaii. My best friend is an acupuncturist, Eastern medicine practitioner, and she owns a space with another beautiful practitioner woman. And they hosted a sound bath for me, or I hosted a sound bath for them at their space. And it was so freestyled. I didn't really have an idea of structure and what it should be. I kind of just wanted to go in and just allow the frequency to speak for itself. And I sang some mantras that I know from my yoga practice, and some traditional songs, some reggae songs that are empowering from Bob Marley. I had a friend of mine who's played with me forever come and do a Nyabingi, just kind of a heartbeat rhythm to kind of just put people almost in a trance state and just allow the frequency to do what it needed to do for each individual. And I was so surprised about how different it was in its impact for each individual. And that to me was a huge affirmation that needs to be a part of what I'm offering, because it's such a beautiful way to hold space for people's bodies to heal themselves, I think is really what it comes down to. Because, a lot of times we say we're teachers, we're healers, we're the ones who are orchestrating these things. But my understanding is we're holding space for the individual, because we are so beautifully unique and we uniquely need different things at different times. But there's this beautiful synchronicity that happens when I'm just offering, and it has a different impact for each person. So again, going back to just the affirmation that sound, frequency, vibration is a tool that I believe all of us can utilize. You don't have to have a good voice. You don't have to play an instrument even well. I mean, you can pick up an instrument and just play, and it can be healing for you, even if it sounds weird or there's no structure to it. There's just something that's so beautiful about creating a relationship with sound.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. It's something to be said too, even whether you have a good singing voice or, the drums, just drums alone. I know how transformative that's been for me. And I remember at such a young age, just hearing those vibrations and those sounds and feeling something ancient within my DNA that it awakened, and it brought a whole different sensibility. In your experience, especially with the sound baths, are you feeling like that there are things within yourself that maybe have transformed since you really started diving into the sounds and the frequencies?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as I'm offering anything, I'm also having an experience. So that's the beautiful part about being in this work, is that it's an exchange. It's an exchange of energy. And, so many times, even just when I'm having conversations with folks, I feel like the message is for me as well. And it's just coming through me, which is such a funny thing to experience, because, a lot of times when people are talking, I don't know if everyone really takes the moment to really have this observer's perspective, even when they're speaking with their own voice. And I've really felt called to really dive into that. I think just kind of starting from just finding inner peace and understanding how to take that separation, and doing that in meditation and other practices can help us to strengthen that muscle, if you will, to be able to be the observer of your life, so that you're not so much in it and using language like I am depressed, but more I'm feeling depressed. And creating just that little bit of space kind of allows you to be in this energy of observing the experience of your life and not getting so stuck and stagnant, so that you can continue to stay in flow. And so absolutely, when I do the sound bath, when I just open my voice and just allow a freestyle humming and oohing and awing, and maybe, some people call things like light language, or I grew up super traditionally Christian, which I don't fully resonate with anymore, but there are beautiful pieces in religion that we can take. And we used to speak in tongues, and I feel like it's the same practice, right? There's so many things that align in so many different teachings that we have as humans and different traditions that are on the same frequency. And so I definitely am excited not only to continue to create new offerings, but to see what impact it has on me. And then as I grow, then I can amplify my offerings. And it's like this snowball effect that we have.
I love that.
Yeah.
And you brought up this great point, just that observer effect that sometimes we're not cognizant of. And that example you used was fantastic and so well articulated with the I am depressed or I am feeling depressed.
Right.
I love that.
Yeah.
Why do you think it's so challenging for folks to maybe take that step to have that separation and have that observer approach, if you will?
Yeah. I believe anything that we struggle with is a conditioning situation. We are conditioned out of our natural state from so many angles the minute we come into this world. And so it's this interesting battle of your conditioning versus your natural inclinations or your intuition, your natural abilities. It's like I think we came into a time in humanity where there's a lot of contrast and a lot of confusion and a lot of programming. And I understand that to come into this world, we do in some sense need some sort of programming to understand how to function in the world that is. But at the same time, I believe that we come in with these pre-installed, if you will, knowings. And so it's that the work of tapping back into that, of hearing that inner voice, of trusting that inner voice, and then leaning on that. Again, I always like to refer or compare it to the idea of the physical body, where it's like a muscle that we have to consistently work in order for it to really become a strength, to become something that we lean on, that we go to first. And from my practices and from viewing observation of other people's practices, I find that, stillness, being quiet, for some folks, meditation, and just being alone is something that can be really challenging, just that in itself. And I find that that is where we can dig into our deepest levels of growth, when we can be alone, when we can sit with our thoughts and observe them rather than owning them and dissecting them and trying to figure them out or pushing them out even. Just allowing, just being, just observing, and practicing that daily. Whether it's 2 minutes a day and then you build from there, it's the same with the physical body. If you've never worked out, if you didn't play any sports growing up, which is a lot of folks, you are going to be intimidated to go into a gym. You're not going to go sign up for a marathon. You're not going to just jump into the big leagues, right? You're going to build up to that. You're going to start with walking in your neighborhood, and then maybe get a gym membership and start running a mile on the treadmill or whatever it is. We build slowly. Our bodies are built to grow at a pace that has a resonance to our ability to grow. I do believe we are quantum. That's probably like a whole nother subject matter, but
love it.
But I think just when we want to say something that everyone can grasp onto and then find their own understanding, I think just becoming the observer of your life is an easy way to find the breadcrumbs that will lead you to that space of really living more in flow.
So well articulated. I no pun intended, I resonate with that. And I think that's what's great is that when we start thinking about when people use terms like good vibes,
Mm-hmm.
And we really think about what that means and what that entails, good vibrations and good frequency, and getting back to what we were talking about earlier with music.
Yeah.
Where did your love of music stem from? What got you on this trajectory to become an artist yourself?
Yeah. You know, I definitely always loved music. I think I met one person in my life in this lifetime that told me they didn't like music. So I think most humans just resonate with music. And I
Mhm.
feel like maybe they had some things to unpack on that.
Right, yeah. I
I'm
don't
like,
like
what?
music.
I know, what does that mean?
I don't know.
But for the most part, you know, it's so interesting, and I'm actually writing a book right now as well about my journey this far. I turned 40 this July, and you know, I've been encouraged by a bunch of friends and just folks that I've worked with all my offerings. Oh, I wish you had a book. I wish you would write a book. And I'm just like, I'm not a writer. And then I'm like, well, what does that mean, Irie? Like, I'm not a writer. I can write. I write music. I speak words. It's basically the same thing, right? So I've started that journey. And in that journey, I've been unpacking a lot of my history because I'm just sharing my life lessons basically through my experiences. And so going back to my childhood, I'm like, how did I fall in love with music? How did I become someone who's offering this special tool? And I was obsessed with soundtracks as a child, which I realize now is not a very common thing. I loved orchestrated music. I was obsessed with the Jurassic Park soundtracks, which is very strings oriented and very, you know, cinematic and dramatic
Mm.
classical style music. And so my mom put me in voice lessons. I must have been singing around the house a lot for her to think that that was a good idea. I don't really remember. Um, but you know, everyone in Hawaii is very musical. Music is a big part of our culture. So we grow up singing. We called it karaoke, but karaoke for those folks who don't know the karaoke sound. But yeah, we do kane kapila, which is basically jam sessions. So anytime you went to someone's house for a barbecue, for a birthday party, there's always people playing and singing music. And so my mom put me in voice lessons when I was about 10, I want to say, with a classical operatic voice teacher. And which is such an interesting choice. You know, it's always like, why did my mom choose that? And why, you know, the journey that we take as humans is just so interesting when you start to look back and see, like, if I hadn't done this, and I wouldn't have gone there, and I wouldn't have met her, and I wouldn't have done this, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It's all this beautiful divine timeline, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, I just I kind of sang because my mom said I was good and I loved music, and I was terrified to sing in front of people. She made me sing in church. I was a very respectful child, so I did what my mom told me to do, even if I didn't want to. And people were moved. People were moved by my singing, and I didn't really understand. I thought it was just like, oh, that's what people do. Maybe because I'm a kid, you know, these things that the ego tries to excuse away. Because being praised or uplifted, I think, is something that we can tend to be conditioned out of a lot, to accept praise and to not have these little voices that are saying, oh, don't be conceited, remain humble, like your gift is from God, it's not yours, it's God's. Like these little voices that get installed in our mind to kind of almost detour us from really just embracing the love that's being offered. And so finding that balance of humility and grace and also acceptance, I think, is a beautiful part of my journey to being a singer, because I still struggle with that. You know, that's I think that's a forever journey with most humans, not just people who are singers.
I can align with that too. And very similar trajectory. My mom loved music, and you know, I just loved performing, and I just loved singing along with some of my favorite artists. You know, it was always with Michael Jackson. I'd be, you know,
So
I'd
good.
start with that, and you know, and then my mom would get me a keyboard and, you know, instruments, and just fan that flame of creativity and music. So I love that story that you told. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
And so playing music and you're doing so much. Gosh, you have music, you yoga, spin, and you even had a podcast, if I'm not mistaken, with Earl C. Benjamin Jr., right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah. And tell me a little bit about that podcast.
Yeah, so we started having conversations. I've been living in Seattle for the last 3 years. And he and I were both spin instructors before Koviki. Koviki is the Hawaiian translation for COVID. I feel like it's lighter and happier, so I use Koviki. And we started going on these nature walks and just chatting about life and our experiences. And there was a lot of stuff going on that was really heightened with racism at the time. And we're both island people, so we have very unique experiences and unique perspectives. I'm a mixed race person, so my family is white, Native American, Black, like Hawaiian. We have so many different cultures and beautiful ethnicities and colors of the rainbow in my family. And so I also have a very unique perspective when it comes to just understanding what this system of divide that's been created is. And so I think we kind of just started it like as an outlet for ourselves to like share also with folks who we felt like maybe, there was a lot of isolation at the time. And so these conversations, we wanted to invite people in and kind of allow them to feel like they're part of the conversation in too. And just really to kind of work through things. I find that I can really understand what I'm going through and what other folks are going through by speaking it out loud, and just talking to myself in the mirror doesn't always resonate. Sometimes it does. But for the most part, it's easier, like you and I exchanging now, we kind of can, we can spark each other to have different things come out of us and through us when it's conversational. And so that was really the basis of it. And we kind of just ended up ending it and letting it go and letting it be what it was and leaving it there. And I don't know if we'll keep it up forever or we'll take it down, because I feel like also speaking on such heavy subject matter like that can be very triggering for a lot of folks, even for myself. And my understanding is it's important to face our triggers, because that's where we grow, where we evolve, where we have the deepest transcending moments. But at the same time, because of that growth, my perspective has expanded since those conversations. So, also just not judging where we are at a time, I think is a big lesson that I've learned, and that I think we all can be empowered through, is to not judge ourselves, because we can only do and say from where we are. And so looking back and judging our experiences or judging the choices that we made isn't helpful. It just makes you feel bad. And so that in itself, I think, isn't where we find growth. It's where we can look back and reflect and say, wow, I'm proud of myself for how much growth I've had since I said that or thought that or did that, right? So that's been a lesson for me as well in the whole process.
I think that's such a great point of looking back and then choosing to see growth in who we are and what we embody. And I guess it goes to that adage of like, when we know better, we do better.
Right, exactly.
And so many of these difficult conversations that, to some they were difficult. So I'm using air quotes, difficult conversations that started happening around race and equality and inclusion and diversity. Yeah. They were difficult for some people, again, air quotes, but it was necessary, and it's still necessary today. Yeah. People need to really, part of this transcendence, part of this awakening and a movement for people to truly find peace. And you brought it up earlier with finding that inner peace. Mm-hmm. How important do you think it is for folks to find that inner peace first, in your opinion?
Yeah, I I think that is the work, because, from my experience, my deepest frustrations and times of feeling the most hopeless is when I try to think about how we can solve all the world's problems and fix everybody. That's an impossible task. We are all connected anyway. And so if we can just focus on doing the work within our own experience and our own lives, our own body, our own consciousness, then it ripples out. There's this, I've been really fascinated with neuroscience lately. And so I've been reading books and studying different teachers and professors in the neuroscience community. One in particular, Huberman, has a podcast as well. He's the neuroscience professor at Stanford, and he gives like these 3-hour lectures on podcasts format. And he has different guests that have, different styles of teaching and different knowledge that they share with his. But at the same time, it's just really, really understanding how mind, body, and spirit kind of all work together, and how, again, going back to sound, frequency, our bodies are giving off a frequency. Our consciousness is creating a vibration, and that affects the environment and the people around us. And so we can feel so much more empowered, so much more peaceful, so much more in flow when we just focus on the inner work. And it's something that's tangible. And I think as physical, dense matter beings, when something is tangible, it feels like it can be accomplished. And when we can feel like we can accomplish something, I think in itself gives us more peace.
I totally agree with that. I think of it, it sparked something within me when you think about like we're emitting this frequency. When someone walks into a room and they're having a bad day and everybody feels it in the room, someone, it just brings everybody down. And for me, it feels that way sometimes with certain headlines or certain posts, social media, and all these different things that just kind of affect us.
Absolutely.
What are some suggestions maybe you would have for people to maybe try and, I guess you could say, protect their being and protect their vibration or their frequency?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And I think something we should be talking about all the time, because so many traditions have different things and tools. And so many of us just living life are able to gather different things that work for us. So it's so important for us to share. For me, I sage a lot. I smudge with Palo Santo, with white sage, with incense. I just find that smoke is such a clearing element and easily accessible. And I love fire. So I have lots of candles and lighters everywhere. So it's easy and accessible.
Mm-hmm.
I smudge my body whenever I've been around a lot of people, just to clear the energy and kind of reset myself back to whatever is mine, and releasing whatever was anyone else's, and also just releasing anything that isn't in alignment with my highest timeline, my highest vibration. In a Hawaiian tradition, we use salt. Salt is something that can be sprinkled outside of your door. It can be sprinkled on your body, or put it on your head. Salt baths. Salt is a beautiful way to also clear and cleanse the aura and the space. And then I have this saying now where I call it being bravely aware. Mm-hmm. So when it comes to things like social media and all of that, like you were saying, like everything is energy. So I believe that we make these energetic ties even by just looking at a photo on our phone or scrolling through all the different things. And it's affecting our vibration a lot of times subconsciously, which is even more dangerous, right? Because then we don't have a conscious awareness of it. How do we know how it's affecting us? And then how do we protect ourselves or cleanse ourselves from there? Yeah. So for myself, right now, I've taken a huge distance from social media and those types of things, just because it doesn't make me feel good. And I think that our emotions are our guidance system. And so if you find yourself feeling like you need to talk about other people's lives, or just feeling uneasy, or feeling, unworthy, or just feeling bad about yourself in any way after looking at something, that in itself is a huge telling that this is affecting your vibration. You need to cleanse, protect, or maybe just avoid those things for a while. Allow your body to reset. Allow yourself the time and space to really think about, is this serving me at all? And when we can do that, we can really start to empower ourselves and live just a more joyful life. I find that, it is also, I'm just going to say the two sides to every coin. It is also a beautiful way for us to connect, like us connecting right now through the internet. I don't even know where you are in the world. I literally have no idea. And here we are sitting in the same virtual room, right? Mm-hmm. So that is beautiful. And I love technology for that reason, because I feel like connection, unity is kind of the baseline, most healing and natural state for humans, is for us to connect with each other, but being more bravely aware. So knowing what's going on and not necessarily avoiding all knowledge and wisdom of what's going on in the world, but just finding what level is right for you in each time and space, because every day is going to be different. If you're dealing with a lot of heavy stuff in your physical reality, maybe don't look at social media at all that day. If you're feeling happy and joyful and at a high vibration, I feel like that's the best time to kind of look at anything, because you'll tend to not spiral as quickly if there is something that is triggering. Also, just saying words. I think, words are spells. And so we can protect ourselves just with our words. Like at the simplest thing, like saying, as I open this social media, I ask for protection, and that whatever does not serve me does not come up on my feed. And when I feel that it is not right anymore, let me know so that I can remove myself from that energetic tie. And then cleansing yourself afterwards. Like I release back to everyone whose post I saw that their energy is theirs and mine is mine. Mm-hmm. But yeah, there's a lot going on. There's a lot being exchanged right now that I think we really need to take into consideration.
I couldn't agree more, and so well articulated. I cannot align more with that, where there's so much just sometimes just for the sake of negativity, people posting something with this negative connotation to it, or just to get a rise out of people sometimes.
Totally.
And it fascinates me that some folks just seemingly just can't get themselves away from it. And seemingly, I hate using the word addicted, but it's out of a lack of a better term right now,
Yeah.
And you're right. It is this two-sided coin where it's beneficial, where we can help bring people together, disseminate information, and bring awareness to things. And just ultimately, I think we need to treat it like it deserves, with respect and with great power. It comes with great responsibility.
Yeah.
And I think that it's just been this, since the advent of the internet, gosh, it's just been like this runaway freight train. And
like, pretty much,
there's like, there's different conductors here and there, and there's different tracks. And you brought up such a great point, is like having that foresight to really navigate and control your perception of what you're about to do, in my, my words, but to paraphrase, I love that. How do you feel like individuals in modern day, if they're running businesses, or if they're, they're artists and they have their social media, what are maybe some ways they could still use these tools, but then be mindful of them? Like, what are some things that maybe you try to do?
Yeah. As I'm creating this new music, and I'm going to be kind of going into my music career full time again. A little backstory. I took 4 to 5 years off and just like completely stopped in 2017 and just switched gears and became a fitness instructor and just was more working on the physical part of my offerings. And so I've slowly started to go back into the space of creating music and being a singer again.
Yeah.
And so now that I'm doing that, I lost my train of thought.
That's all right. We're exactly where we're supposed to be. So it's okay. I love this.
What was your question again?
What matters to me is just where you're feeling this. You're a conduit right now, right? So let's talk about the backstory of your music.
Mm-hmm.
You took some time off in 2017.
Yeah.
And you're going to be diving back into it.
Yes. I feel like everything is divine. That's my perspective. Everything is divine. And I went through a divorce in 2017 that was extremely traumatic. I'm super grateful there were no children involved because I know that's a huge extra layer. I grew up with a divorced family, so divorced twice, my biological father and my stepfather, who I'm very close with both of them. So I understood divorce and then I went through it myself. And so I'm like, okay, threes, we think of the numbers in life and we can look at things in that way and see how the patterns happen, right? And so when I'm experiencing something 3 times, I'm thinking, okay, this is a lesson or this is an experience that I chose. I believe that we choose a lot of what we experience for growth. And so I'm like, what can I learn from this? This is going to be transformative for me. And I'm saying that now that I'm sort of on the other side, if you will, but when I was going through it, I didn't have that perspective. I was like, what the hell? My whole life is falling apart. But now I see how beautiful that trauma was for me and how transformative it was for me. I wouldn't have expanded to who I am now without that experience. I just wouldn't. I know that. And again, I'm going to be going into detail in my book about all of this, but long story short, I have become such a different person since 2017. Like I literally feel, I don't know if you've heard of, there's this idea in the spiritual world of like walk-ins or like your consciousness or your soul can like swap out. And I'm not sure how I feel about that. I don't discount anyone's perspectives, but at the same time, we have to go with what resonates with us, right? As individuals. And so I'm like, what does that mean? In some way, I kind of feel that that can also just be like, when we evolve in this one lifetime, we can live almost multiple lives or be multiple people within one lifetime. And so because I've changed so much, my music and my intention and my energy and my responses and all of it is just so different. So I'm excited to kind of see where this journey takes me now with this powerful tool as a more expanded version of myself stepping into this world. I feel like the impact that I can have is will have a lot farther reach, because I'm just looking at it as so much more than what I did originally, which was like, this is fun. Songs are fun. Everybody loves music, positivity. I started in reggae music. And so reggae is, as most people know, it's a very uplifting or just like empowering, like fight the power, like down with Babylon type of music. And so I've always resonated with that message, but I feel like now I embody that message. Yeah.
And it's almost like you had to go through the struggles to understand. You had to feel that trauma to understand, oh gosh, now there is a power, there's a divine force, and there is essence to what I'm saying and what I'm doing and what I'm putting out there for people to pick up on.
Exactly.
I got tingles when
Yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome.
It's real. It's
It
very
is
real.
real. So,
Oh, that's going back to the divine. That's what I was saying.
Mhm.
The divine, the divinity in everything is something that we can just choose to see. As much as there's so much suffering and there's so much contrast, I'll just call it that, because I feel like contrast is a word that holds less judgment.
Mhm.
We grow it when there's contrast. I mean, just think about our physical examples in our reality. When you think about plants, like plants need to be buried in the dirt and packed down and then grow these roots, and then they sprout up. And then it's just like a little bud, right? It starts as a bud, and then it can become, depending on what the plant is, this huge, massive, powerful tree that lives for thousands of years. Like that in itself, I mean, I love trees, PS, by the way. Trees to me are just some of the most magical beings that we have on this planet. And I'm just in awe of their presence and what they represent. I don't know if you've seen the documentary Fantastic Fungi or Fungi.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, mind blown.
Mm-hmm.
So just understanding that, right? The mycelium network that's happening, and everything is electric and everything is energy, and how they communicate with each other and they share nutrients with each other under the soil. It's like, what a beautiful example of strength in unity.
Right
Underneath our feet all the time. And they're just telling us by their living example, like, humans, that's what you're supposed to be doing up there.
Right.
What are you doing?
You're getting it wrong. All right, we'll keep doing this then.
Right.
Yeah.
We'll hold the line.
Mhm.
So trying to emulate that, with our lives, I think is something that is really going to take us as a collective to the next level.
Absolutely. And you're right. It's that collective mentality and really working together and realizing, like you said earlier, that, we are one. Regardless of anything else, we are one anyway.
Yeah.
We just need to start acting like it.
That would be great.
That'd be
wonderful.
Yeah, time's a ticking. Let's go. Come on.
I would love that.
Yeah. And we'll just continue to be, fungus among us, and just hold the line for everybody.
Fungus among us.
That's it. Fungus among us.
I love mushrooms.
Yeah, absolutely. And
so cool.
So you've got new music coming.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about it. What's happening? What's going on?
Yes. Going back again to the beauty of the two-sided coin of technology, I found George, who you know very well, big up George, who is an incredible producer, via Elizabeth April's podcast. And I can't even remember exactly how those breadcrumbs came together, but I was listening and I somehow saw he produced something for her podcast or edits her podcast, something like that. And then I just reached out to him on Instagram. And I have been doing that similar path of just reaching out to people through social media who produce music for like the last almost year, 9 months, I would say, since I started to just really dive back into wanting to create music. And I'm sure a lot of people can resonate with the idea of being ghosted. This is like a whole new part of our culture where people just drop off the face of the earth for who knows why. And that kept happening to me. And so I, started to get frustrated and questioning everything. I'm like, is this not the path for me anymore? Have I evolved to a new person and I'm supposed to do something completely different? Should I stay in yoga and fitness? And is that my tool now to share with humanity? And what I learned in that process was finding a way to understand the difference between giving up and surrender. And I didn't realize that they were two completely different things because they seem very similar. And it's really just about the energy behind the choice that makes the difference. And so I realized that when I surrender is when I'm the most in flow. Think about it like the metaphor of just being in water. And if you're going down the rapids of a river, which I don't know if everyone's had that experience, but I've definitely been like river rafting in Alaska with my family and stuff.
Awesome.
And, the flow of the river is going and it's carrying you. If I were to jump out of that boat and try to swim upstream, like I'm basically going to stay kind of in the same spot because first of all, the water is powerful. And so if I'm going against it, it's just going to hold me in stagnation. And so when we can surrender to the flow and become one with the energy that's moving, even though at times, as you're moving down the rapids with the flow, it can be a little scary. It's powerful. It can be moving fast. There is this beautiful feeling that can come over you when you change to the perspective of surrender, where you feel like you're being held. And when you feel like you're being held, you feel safe. And when you feel safe, you tend to feel happier. And when you're more joyful, your vibration raises. And so things will come into your experience that are on a higher frequency. And usually things that are on a higher frequency are things that are more enjoyable. So I found that when I went into surrender, as a testimony, I literally found George, went home, did a show like I think a couple weeks later in Hawaii. My drummer, who I've worked with for years, has become a producer over the last 2 years, like full-time producer and musician. Didn't even know that. He's like, "Oh, you're making new music? Here's some beats I've been working on." And I'm like, and they were so in alignment with exactly the sound that I was looking for in all those other producers and random people that ghosted me. And I just came to this moment of realization where I was like, whoa, I just got to feel what it really is like to really be in that surrender flow mode and how beautifully things align. And they are greater than I could have imagined them to be. And why not take that path? It's easier, it's more enjoyable, it's exciting because there's things that come into your experience that you didn't even think of, that you didn't even have on your scope or range of imagination. And I'm just, diving into that. I think it's been, I don't even know, I'd have to check how long it's been since I actually reached out to George, but I listened to the tracks and it's just something in me. I knew immediately because I started to have ideas for melodies, for lyrics, for, subject matter that I wanted to speak about. And when we are in flow, that's how it works. It just pours into you and through you. Mm-hmm. And it just shows up without a lot of effort. And I'm finding, that's the muscle that I want to strengthen now. That's like my new quote unquote workout, is staying in that state as much as possible every single day.
I love that. It's so great. And I can align with that in those moments of time when you're in flow and you feel it and you're just this conduit and it's just happening seemingly naturally because it is.
Yes, exactly. Because it is. When it feels easy, when it feels natural, that is when you are in divine alignment with your true self, your higher self. It's like, I feel like there's these doors that kind of, if you think about it, above your head, we have like these, like, what is it called? Locks and, like the Panama Canal. What is that called? Locks and, I'm going to say locks and bagels. That's not locks and bagels.
It's not.
I guess I'm hungry. But the system of doors, right? Mm-hmm. Where it's like one opens and then the flow, and then you open another and then the flow. And then eventually, if you can open all the doors, then there's this rushing wave that can come through. But we have to decide. We have free will. So we choose which doors to lock and unlock. We choose which moments to surrender. We choose which moments to sit in resistance because of things like fear or trauma that tend to hold us back from just really letting go and being in surrender. It can be, I get it, a totally terrifying space if you've never been there. But I just want to say with my own experience that when I finally did, all the fears and worries that I did have actually ended up in a moment transmuting to this beautiful divine lifting of this heaviness that I was carrying that I didn't even realize that I was carrying. And that in itself, I think, is a reason to try it, because feeling lighter, I think, is something that any human in this life can benefit from. It's a heavy, dense world we live in right now.
It really is.
Yeah.
And you're right. It's about like we can choose to be open or not, and we can choose and to speak, no pun intended, about what you had said earlier about words being spells and how we are conditioning ourselves mentally, psychologically, spiritually. We're trapping ourselves. We're setting ourselves up for failure without even realizing it.
Right.
Or, to your point, we can open ourselves up. We can shift our thinking. We can shift our own consciousness and raise our vibration and allow these wonderful divine alignments to happen. Divine mints? I don't know.
Divine mints. I love divine mints.
Divine alignments. I don't know.
Let's make new words.
And Andy's mints, I guess. I don't know. That's great too.
I love Andy's mints.
But like, it's so fascinating that like when we're in the flow, it feels so easy. But yet when we're trying to get to that state, it's like, how come I can't get there? And we're just like spinning tires in the sand.
Yeah. I mean, we live in time and space, and that's something to always take into consideration, that there is this sort of delay in our experience from thought, from energy to physical dense matter manifestation or life experience, reality, if you will. So when you take that into consideration, I have found that it's been really helpful for me to have more patience. Earl and I talk about this a lot. We still kind of have a podcast, but it's just he and I talking on the phone, where we check in and we'll talk for like 2 to 3 hours, right? And share our downloads and what we've gone through in the last week or so. And the word patience has come up so much in the last couple of years, because it's like, how many layers of frustration can we battle through? How many layers of unknowing and finding surrender in the unknown? And patience is really the key, because when you think about time and space and the delay that happens, again, going back to the physical example, if you work out for a long time, for the first, depending on your body, everyone's body is different, but there's always a delay. It's not like you're going to go to the gym and like lose 20 pounds the first time you run on a treadmill. That's just not how this physical reality works. I wish that would be awesome. But two sides to every coin. If it did work that way and manifestations in physical happened immediately, think about how many things would be in our experiences that we really didn't want. Moments in when we're feeling dark and our thoughts are spiraling to really low frequency places, and things that we think about. I'm really grateful that we don't have the instant manifestation with this life, because I mean, I wouldn't be here.
Right.
I wouldn't be here. And so that in itself is grace. We're given grace in this dense experience to have that delay where it's like, are you sure? Are you sure you want that? Keep resonating at that frequency and let us know that you really want that to be a physical reality. And that's the practice. It's staying in the state as long as you can until it shows up physically. And when your frequency is stronger, when you've grown that muscle, when you've gone and consistently worked out in the gym for 21, 30 days, whatever it is, where it becomes natural, then it shows up. And that's different for everyone. For some people, you work out for a week and you literally lose an inch and you're like, wow, my pants fit better. For some people, it takes 3 months until their body's like, are you sure we're doing this? Because we've never done this. So are you sure we're going to change to this? And then eventually the body will kick in and change. And then the next time you do it, so you gain a little bit of weight and you want to lose it again, the body goes, oh, I remember this. We know exactly what to do. It's called muscle memory. It's called neuroplasticity. The more we repeat something, install a program ourselves, then the body and the cells know exactly where to go when you say, this is where we're going today. And then boom. And then it becomes faster and more in flow and more natural. And you feel more empowered, not only in your physical body, but in your mind and in just your experience and how you can manipulate reality. It becomes this magical thing where you almost become like a magician. And that is exciting to be able to tap into that.
I loved how well you illustrated that. It was so great. And you're right. It is. It's like literally being our own architects for our own destiny.
Yeah.
And getting into that natural state. And your great point about you have to exercise that proverbial muscle. You have to continuously work on that vibration and get yourself in alignment with that versus this same old, to your point earlier, just like something that can pull you down, when you spiral effect, we can spiral downwards. We're always spiraling out, but which direction are we going to go in? We're going to go up or are we going to go down? Like, let's, and we are in control of that. Each and every moment in this life, we have absolute control over that.
Yeah, the choice is yours, my friend.
I love that. I love that. And so I love your advocacy for children as well, too. I'd like to, what are some key things, especially now more than ever, do you think that we as, the older generation should be doing for the children of today?
Yeah. I try to stay away. I mean, that's your word, but I try to stay away from the word should, because I feel like should in itself holds a little bit of a judgment resonance.
Okay. Right on.
And that's just for me, what I found in my experience, because there's so much of that in our programming, I think, as children, especially, where it's like, you should do this, you should do that, you should do this, you should go to college, you should be a doctor, you should, listen to authority, you should, there's so many layers to that.
That's a great point.
Yeah. I feel like we spend the rest of our adult lives trying to unpack all of that. Should I really, or did somebody just tell me that? Right.
Fair. Yeah.
Right. So I think that for me, because I call it empowering the youth, I think that the main thing, because everyone's experience is so different, that it can be difficult to kind of just give like something that's going to hit and land with each kid. That's going to be like that one seed that launches them into their highest timeline, right? That in itself can be kind of a huge task to try to accomplish. That can be eventually discouraging, because you're like, how do I do that? And so for me, it's really been just about reminding the children that they are capable, that it is possible, whatever it is, reminding them of their infinity, I think, is kind of a general underlying intention behind every interaction or every offering that I create with the kids, because a lot of them don't have parents that are in a position or desire to give them that idea, because there is so much of this interesting dichotomy of just like control, where, parenting is about, let me teach you what I know. I was in this existence first. I'm supposed to protect you and guide you to understand this world that I brought you into, and what it means and how to function and how to succeed. And there's this idea too of like the unconscious desires that we have as adults that we project onto children. And I think that's a huge factor. And so for me, that's been a big part of my mission, because I am not a physical parent. I have the time and space and the cognitive awareness to be able to speak to children in a way that's more from a space of neutrality, where I can come in and just show them love and encouragement without having any sort of unconscious agenda or unconscious traumas that I'm going to be projecting onto them, like, I don't want my kid to have to suffer the way I did. So they need to do this, and that in order to make sure that they don't go through that. And it's like, well, what I'm starting to understand on a deeper level is, what if they chose to do that? Because they're going to take what you went through, go through the same thing, and then do more, like pass the baton to them, give them all the lessons you learned when you went through that, so that they can take it and be greater, be bigger, be better, be more. And I think that that's what the process of having children is. It's like each new human that comes here should be able to go a little further and do a little more, or to break a generational curse and heal something that many people in their lineage were unable to, or didn't have the tools or the environment to do so. And so I just really look to kind of hold space for kids and be that extra adult to kind of, go back to that idea that it takes a village. Like it really does. And we've been so conditioned or programmed or manipulated out of that. And I think it's such an important part of our evolution as humans, is to have more than one adult, if you will, perspective that's influencing a children's mind, life, and experience in order for them to really be equipped to fulfill whatever mission they decide they want to take in this life.
I love that. It's so beautifully put. Is that mentorship, that we can provide for children and young minds. And I love that other perspective outside of their parental perspective, being able to come at it with that sense of neutrality and just, we're all going to make mistakes, even as adults,
exactly. Exactly.
I still, it's fascinating because even for myself, I can think back to feeling like I'm still a kid or a teenager, or I'm in my 20s, here I am, in my 40s, and like, I can still identify and feel like, oh, I remember that feeling of being 10 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was a step parent for a short period of time. So like, that's how I was able to work with the little guy and just meet him on his level and understand, but then just show him options and discuss them and be open to it, and let him ask questions and give him the truth, not lie to him. It was a rewarding experience.
Absolutely.
So that's wonderful.
Children come to teach us too. And I think that's a factor that we don't often take into consideration. Like, they're coming in with a fresh, unjaded perspective. Like, let's take that in, because we've been in the trenches for however many lifetimes or years in this particular life, or however you want to count it. Right. So,
and that's exactly it, and so I also had gone through a divorce, and it needed to happen, for my own well-being, and I did everything that I felt I could try and do, counseling and everything. But at the end of the day, being a step parent is really what kept me there the longest, because I cared about this little guy. And what I found was I learned so much from him. He was this lesson, because of all the trauma that I've experienced and all these different experiences that I had that got me to a certain point. He reminded me of how it could be.
Yes.
And that's what children really do. They really just teach us so much each and every day. And we just have to keep lifting them up and keeping I loved what you said, showing them the true infinity, so to speak, that they're infinite. Right. I love that.
Yeah. I mean, I have several nieces and nephews, and I have two that are twins, boy-girl twins. And I've got to be in their life a lot. Just timing and everything. I got to be there from when they were born and be with them all the time. And they're now 6. And so they have this beautiful, active imaginations where they play and create these worlds together. And my sister is such an incredible mother. She really, really, really holds space and cultivates that and empowers their imagination. And I think that, of course, different parents have different obligations. And a lot of parents don't have the time and space to do that because they're surviving and keeping the children afloat. But, when someone like me comes in, Auntie Irie, I have the time and space to cultivate that and to empower that. And I think that if we can start to focus on just that one element of really not snuffing out the light when it comes to imagination, because that is the magic factory. And we get conditioned out of that pretty quickly. And for some folks, immediately, it's such a powerful tool. It's how we create our reality. And so if we can empower that in kids, as silly as it feels, sometimes they're like, my nephew, he's so cute. He's like, today he becomes an animal. He loves animals. And he's like, today I'm a bear and my name's Billy. And so if you say, oh, Makai, which is his real name, then he's like, no, my name's Billy. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Today you're Billy. He's just living in that world. And it's so beautiful to watch them develop this and continue to strengthen the muscle of their imagination. And I'm just excited to see what kids will be able to create in this new world that I feel is coming. And it is in process. And as much as it seems so dark right now, and there's so much suffering and so much contrast and confusion going on, I believe that it's like the forest, when the forest burns and it becomes ash, it's sad. There's animals that lose their lives. It's devastation, if you will, from one perspective. But the other side of that coin is that mycelium is underneath there, and it is going to bring a new world that will be sprouting from the soil. And I feel like that's where we are as a human race right now. We are burning it all down. And in my perspective, I think that it's necessary because we have beauty on the horizon that is beyond our imagination, that is beyond our comprehension. And the children are going to be the ones that are going to be really creating and cultivating that new reality. And so I feel like it's a huge part of our kuleana, our responsibility, our obligation as older humans, if you will, to help cultivate that in them as much as we can and empower them to be imaginative, to remember that they are infinite, and to just believe in themselves. I wrote a song recently, actually, too, that is coming out this year. And it's called Believe in You. And it's for the kids. And it's just, a gentle reminder that, there are a ton of us that believe in you. And not only do we believe in you, but you should believe in you. And when we can all just remind each other that we're not doing this alone, as much as the work is individual, we're not doing this alone. We never are. Even when in our physical reality, we feel alone, there are beings, energies surrounding us, waiting to love on us. We just have to call on them and ask them to be with us and to be reminded that they are there. And I'm telling you that energy and being able to be alone and just sit with those energies and feel our ancestors, our guides, our angels, whatever spiritual interpretation you have of being held, can make this life so magical. So magical. And as I'm saying this, it's 11:11. I mean, it's just like the synchronicities are everywhere, that are affirming that this is the path.
I love that. Oh, where can folks find you? How can they find you?
In the infinite universe of it all. Also on Instagram. My website. Yeah. My website is thisisirielove.com. And then I have all my links on there. My music, my first single is going to be coming out in June. And then I'll be releasing singles. We're in that game now of you release a bunch of singles and then you release a project. So the full project will probably be coming out towards the end of 2022 or maybe in the first quarter. I'm trying to tie it in with the release of my book as well, because that will also explain and dissect the songs and the experiences that inspired the songs, along with just every life lesson that I can possibly remember. I want to put it all in one book, because, we consume information in different ways as humans. And I think that it's beautiful that we have so many platforms now, to be able to share.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I cannot thank you enough for taking the time, giving your energy and your space today. It's just been such a wonderful experience.
Thank you. Likewise, I feel your energy through this screen, and it just has been a beautiful space. So thank you for holding space for me.
And there you have it. I absolutely adored that conversation. Truly appreciate her space and time and her energy. I'm looking forward to the new single that's going to be coming out, so be sure to keep tabs on that. You can find Irie at thisisirielove.com and on social media at thisisirielove. If you love good vibes and good music, I would absolutely implore you to check out Irie Love. Thank you so much for listening and for watching. If you liked this podcast, take a moment and share it. We're still a new podcast, and by you just sharing it helps us tremendously. If you're watching, hit that like button, and we hope you take a moment to even subscribe to the channel. It's been such a beautiful journey thus far for George and myself, and we can't thank each of you enough. So, until next time, take care of one another and keep thinking for yourself.